Okay, so starting off with materials, we're going to need a hot glue gun, obviously. And if you have a glue gun that has a high heat setting, that's going to be really helpful. But if you don't, that's totally fine as well. Any glue gun should work just fine. I also, for the most part, prefer using the small glue gun just because it's more precise. But again, any glue gun should work just fine. We're trying to keep this budget friendly, so whatever you have at hand should work okay. And of course, you're also going to need your trusty glue sticks. And another thing we're going to need are some hair clips. I have different sizes ones. I have a medium size and a smaller size. These really depend what size barrettes you're going to make, but I found these two to be the perfect size for me. We're also going to need a sheet of parchment paper. I don't have the box with me, I seem to have misplaced it. But any parchment paper should work just fine. Mine is from the dollar store. We're also going to need a pen or a pencil. We're also going to need some nail polishes. I don't have a huge variety, but this is what's like in my jar, which is what I'll be using. Then I'll also be using some acrylic paints that I already had at home. These are some of them. I have more colors, but yeah, again, I'm just trying to use whatever I can find at home to keep it as budget friendly as possible. So any acrylic paint or any nail polishes that you have should work okay. Then we'll also be needing this Mod Podge Dimensional Magic. This will help give our barrettes a more glossy and resin-like finish. I got mine at Hobby Lobby with the coupon because the girl is all about saving, and again, budget friendly. Now this is optional, but if you happen to have a silicone mold around the house, that's also very useful for making some cute shapes. I happen to have this one lying around at home, and to my luck, it has some really cute shapes. Again, this is completely optional. You could either buy one of these, or maybe look around your house and see if you have something similar. I also got some little knickknacks from the dollar store to decorate my barrettes. Anything cute that you might have at home could be used for decorating. Last but not least, we're also going to need some paintbrushes. And hear me out, this might be a little bit strange, but we're also going to need some toothpicks. It will all make sense once we continue with the video. And that's about it for all the materials we need. Okay, starting out with our parchment paper, we're going to cut out a small sheet, and with our pen or pencil, we're going to draw out our desired shapes. I freehanded mine. Prior to this video, I had already drawn out my shapes on another piece of paper, but because I wanted them to be a little bit bigger, I tweaked them out in the new sheet and also for the sake of this video. Now after drawing out our shapes, we'll be taking our hot glue gun and going over our template. Start by doing the outlines and be patient with this, as we want our shapes as even as possible. But even then, don't worry about it if your outlines aren't as perfect. We can always go back and fix this once the glue dries. Once you do the outline, start filling the middle part of your shape to make it complete. And well, here I'm speeding up the process because it did take me a little bit to do, but we'll continue to do this for as many barrettes as you want to do. Oh yeah, and another tip, keep your hot glue sticks close because I found myself running out of glue quite a few times while filling in the middle. So while I was waiting for the glue to dry, I got a little bit creative and made another different shape for my barrettes. Now that our hot glue has dried, we can unstick these from our parchment paper and go ahead and fix our shapes if we messed up a little bit when outlining them. Like I mentioned earlier, even if our outlines aren't super neat, we can always go back and fix this by cutting around with a pair of scissors. Now that that's done, we're going to take our shapes and flip them over because we're going to be adding a second layer of hot glue in the back. Now, why am I flipping them over and doing it in the back? It's because if we end up messing up a little bit our hot glue, it won't be too noticeable and the front will still look super neat even if the back doesn't, which won't affect us too much. This is only to add a little bit of thickness, so even if it gets a little bit bumpy, that's completely okay because the back part of it won't really be visible. And once again, if we messed up a little bit with our edges, we can always go back and fix them up with our scissors. Now to make this little heart, I used the silicone mold I mentioned earlier. For this, I'm using my other hot glue gun that has a high heat setting. The reason I recommended the high heat setting for this is because we want to pump out hot glue as fast and as much as possible in order to get a really even shape. Otherwise, it may turn out to look a little bit wonky. Now, once I fill the mold to my desired thickness, I like tapping it on the table just to make sure the hot glue distributes itself as evenly as possible, once again so it won't turn out to be a little bit wonky or a little bit bubbly. Once our hot glue has dried, we'll be taking out the shapes from the mold, and we may end up having some imperfections in the back, but we can always fix this by cutting away the excess glue, so it's really nothing to worry about. And now that we are done making all of our barrettes, we can get down to painting. In this part, I'll be showing you the technique I used to make a sort of marble effect on my barrettes. What I did is that I took two colors that I wanted to mix up, and I kind of made some thick droplets within the barrette in different areas. In this case with both the red and the pink color. After that, I took a toothpick and I started to mix the colors around till I was satisfied with how it looked. If needed, you can add a little bit more of whatever color you feel is missing. This works both with nail polish and acrylics. Here I'll be leaving the rest of the video of me mixing around the colors just so you can get a better idea of how it starts to take shape. Although you can get creative and paint these any other way, that's kind of the fun part about making all of these, is that you can, put your own little twist into them and make them a little bit different than what you usually see around. And, also make them your own and make them fit more towards your aesthetic or whatever you're going for. Moving on, doing this technique with acrylics, it's almost the same as doing it with the nail polish. Here I used my brush to get a good amount of paint on them, and I sort of did the same thing, making small droplets on my barrette, and then I took my toothpick once again, started mixing and blending around the colors until I was happy with how it was looking. And then another way of doing this, if you're lazy and don't want to keep having to wash your brushes over and over and over again, is to simply put the droplets of paint straight from the bottle onto the barrette. It's easier to do this with acrylics than with a nail polish because acrylics have a creamier consistency, unlike nail polish that's like more watery and liquidy. Liquidy is even a word, but anyway, you get the idea. And then you know the drill after that, just use your toothpick to mix around and blend until you're happy with the result. Although for the toothpick, you will have to be changing that every time you make every time you mix new colors, because otherwise it's gonna get mixed up. And I know because I did this by accident and I accidentally mixed up a color that I didn't want into something I was already blending. And now that we are done painting our barrettes, we can get down to decorating. For this I used the pearls from earlier, these small crystals, and the star crystals. The following steps are quite easy to follow, just place the beads in the desired place, and then hot glue them onto place. Like I said earlier as well, the painting and decorating process is completely up to your creativity as well, so have fun with it and make these your own. Moving on to our next step, I will be taking our barrettes and covering them with our Mod Podge Dimensional Magic. We'll start by outlining the barrettes and then filling the middle part of it. And don't worry too much if it ends up spilling it a little bit to the sides, but let's try to stay within the edge of the barrette as much as possible. Be patient with this step as it can be a little bit time consuming. I also recommend you have a toothpick close by for this, just in case you get any bubbles and you need to pop them right away. Now this step isn't completely necessary, but the reason I did this is to give our barrettes a little bit more of a smoother and shinier finish, almost like if they were made out of resin. I will also add that I did 2 layers of this on each barrette, but take in mind that Mod Podge Dimensional Magic says it takes 3 hours to dry. But in my case, just to make sure it cured properly, I let them dry for 24 hours before adding the next layer. I was afraid it might end up being sticky or it might lose its gloss, so that's why I did that. You can also just do 1 layer, but I decided to go for 2 because I wanted to add a little bit more dimension to them as well. Although once again, this is completely optional and you don't have to do this if you want to stay more budget friendly. Although I do think Dimensional Magic does go a long way, even for its price. I still have like more than half a bottle left of it. Ta-da! And now that our Mod Podge Dimensional Magic has dried, we should end up with them looking like this. And with this, we can now move on to our final step. Now all that's left to do is to hot glue our clips to the shape, and that's about it. Small tip before ending the tutorial is that if your hair clips end up being a little bit bigger than the shape you made, you can always take a pair of pliers or even scissors and cut them into the size that you needed them to be. I ran into this problem when adding the hair clip into my flower because it had an unusual shape, so I ended up cutting the little tip of it off. Just, a small tip to keep in mind. And with that, we should be done with our cute creations and ready to go out with our new trendy barrettes. The end of this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to click the like button down below, and if you would like to see more videos like this, be sure to subscribe and click the bell notification in order to be notified on my next upload. Also, I would be very happy if you guys let me know down in the comments below if you actually ended up trying this DIY yourself, or even better if you guys can tag me on Instagram to show me your work. Once again, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!